We start our story on October 29th, 1929, a day which is called Black Tuesday. On this day, the stock market collapsed. As the years of the Great Depression went on, unemployment rose to 25%, and by 1932, more than 9,000 banks had closed, wiping out millions of savings accounts.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born in Hyde Park, New York in 1882. He caught polio when he was 39 years old and could never walk again. In 1928, he ran for governor of New York. He won. In 1932, he ran for president. We set the stage on the presidential election of 1932.
Hello, citizens of the United States. I am here to tell you that I am your 32nd president of these fine United States. I am here to also address the growing problem of the Great Depression, and I would like to take direct and vigorous action to solve the problem in a term I would like to call the 100 days. It is about to look bright for you citizens. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Thank you.
Roosevelt made good on his inaugural promise of action now. He installed a national banking holiday. He tried to save the national banks that were on the brink of collapse.
Hello, my friends. I'm here to tell you I placed the bank holiday due to the lack of confidence in the banks. They will open up tomorrow and better than ever before. We have provided machinery to restore our financial system. It is up to you to make it work. It is no less your problem as much as it is mine. Together, we cannot fail. Thank you.
Fixing the bank was one of the first accomplishments of many to come. During his presidency, he also created Social Security, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the National Recovery Administration. This helped to aid the American citizens during the Great Depression. During the time of FDR's many years in office, the Germans were still bitter from the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler was growing in power. He remilitarized the army, and on September 1st, 1939, the Germans invaded Poland. At this time, World War II has begun.
As the war in Europe raged on, America held fast to their isolationist policy. That option was removed by the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. Finding themselves as targets in an active conflict, America swiftly changed course and supported becoming involved in yet another foreign war.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese has attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced. The attack was also made on naval and military activities on the principal island of Oahu.
Today, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. I ask Congress declared the unprovoked and dastardly attack by the Japanese a state of war. The attack on Pearl Harbor was intended to decimate American naval forces and leave the West Coast and the Hawaiian Islands vulnerable. The Japanese strategy was to force America to accept a quick peace and stay out of the war in the Pacific. Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had great respect for American industrial potential and feared a long, drawn-out war. His attack on Pearl Harbor failed to meet the need, so he instantly began planning another strike on the American naval base at Midway. This gamble also failed. Instead of crippling the American fleet further, the Americans scored a major victory by eliminating the bulk of the primary Japanese naval weapons, their aircraft carriers. That accomplished, America now had time to rebuild their naval forces, while the Japanese, who were already suffering due to pre-war embargoes, had few resources available and were forced to go on the defensive.
Filmed under fire. These are the first pictures of America's great naval victory in the Pacific. Army, Navy, and Marine planes, cooperating with the fleet, surprise a Jap invasion force sent to capture strategic Midway Island, stepping stone to Hawaii and the North American continent. U.S. planes roaring to the attack amid a rain of anti-aircraft fire.
Admiral Yamamoto's fears were well-founded. America's industrial output from 1942 nearly quadrupled its output from 1940. And from 1945, America nearly tripled the 1942 totals. America's industrial might was far surpassing the combined outputs of all other combatants, both Allied and Axis. And Yamamoto's fears proved to be prophetic. The war in Europe was similarly affected by American industrial power. The Germans simply could not match America's production, tank for tank, ship for ship, plane for plane. But German advances on the continent could not be reversed overnight. America and her allies had to take small victories in Africa and Italy while building up forces and materials for a massive strike which came on June 6, 1944. Operation Overlord, also known as D-Day, was the invasion of Normandy and helped drive the Germans from Western Europe and finally put the Nazis on the defensive. In 1939, German scientists successfully split a uranium atom and began working on a way to harness the energy released. Albert Einstein warned President Roosevelt of this development in a letter, and the nuclear race was on. Originally intended for the use against the Nazis, the atomic bombs were completed after the Germans' unconditional surrender on May 7, 1945. Defeating the Japanese, however, was becoming a costly, bloody effort. On August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, an industrial city with a large military presence. 3 days later, on August 9th, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, another industrial center. Although the bombs failed to force Japan to surrender, America and the world now had a gauge by which to view the use of the atomic weapon in warfare, and the nuclear age had begun.
We end our story on April 12, 1945. FDR dies. With his leadership, he aids America through the Great Depression and also World War II, and helped us stay positive during the hardest times in American history.